Hey everyone! So I recently found this YouTube channel called Merciful Servant, which is this Islamic YouTube channel that specializes in putting out these, they're supposed to be like kind of inspiring videos where they're sort of like 4 to 6 minutes long, and they speak on a topic or a subject and they make it try and sound like really, really deep and meaningful, and how like this is going to change your life, like that kind of thing. I recently came across one particular video called Why You Need Religion in Your Life, and you know, it was a good little giggle. Basically it was, he tried to make all these arguments about like, oh, and this and this and this, and hence you need religion, and atheists are wrong and they have no meaning in their life. Like that was basically the video. And so today I thought we could watch it together and have a little bit of a giggle and talk about some of the points that he tries to raise that just aren't very good.
Why is religion crucial? Even the most uncompromising atheist believes that truthfulness is better than lying, right?
So, interesting way of opening. But I'm not entirely sure what this has to do with why you need religion in your life. But yeah, on the whole, I reckon being truthful is probably better than lying. I also think that there are perhaps a few exceptions. You know, it's very clearly not just a black and white issue, but go on, we'll see where this goes.
The most uncompromising atheist believes that faithfulness is better than betrayal, right?
Again, I think this depends on context. Like, do I want my boyfriend to be faithful to me rather than betray me? Yes, of course. But would I want a young girl who's been abused by her parents to be faithful to her parents? No, I'd want her to betray them and betray their trust and go talk to the police, report them. You know, it's not just a black and white issue. Context is important. Actions aren't just truth or lie, faithful or betrayal. There's so much more to it than that, and it's so much more complicated than that.
These terms are not from this world, and the material world does not substantiate their conceptualization or their requisite.
Well, that's a fancy word salad right there. Do you want any dressing with that?
What does truthfulness mean, and what does lying mean? If we analyze the depth of the atoms, will we be able to monitor concepts like truthfulness or lying?
You what, mate? Okay, let's look at some dictionary definitions here, okay? Truth means in accordance with fact or reality. It also means accurate or exact. Lie means an intentionally false statement. It has nothing to do with atoms. Seriously, stop with these like deepities that don't actually mean anything, where you just like throw out a bunch of words and then say atoms and truth and therefore my religion is correct. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Just because you use big words and make it sound fancy doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean you're correct. Either something's a fact and you're honest about it, or it's not a fact and you can be honest about it, or it's not a fact and you lie about it. Sometimes you can lie without meaning to, out of ignorance, that's fair enough, but it has nothing to do with analysing the depth of atoms. Like, that's rubbish said by someone trying to sound deep and trying to sound like they know more than they do about a subject that they clearly aren't that knowledgeable on.
If we observe the physics of the galaxies or the chemistry of the hormones, will we be able to observe faithfulness or betrayal?
Actually, maybe with the hormones, yeah, that could definitely tell you something about, you know, faithfulness and betrayal. Definitely, by observing the hormones released in someone's body, I reckon you could definitely tell if they're lying or not, or if they've betrayed someone or if they feel guilt or not. I reckon you can tell something there.
Hence, these concepts are not from this material world. Yet, they are real concepts, as a matter of fact.
Okay, well, they are real what? Here's the thing, you can't get around the fact that they are concepts from this world, because they're concepts that we came up with as people and as a society. They're social constructs. You're right that they're not material in the same way that a flower or a rock is, but they came from us, they were created by us, so they're still products of this physical world. They're products of us and everything around us and the life we live and the world we live in the same way that metaphors aren't real things, but they're still a product of humanity and our speech and language patterns and so on.
They are the most important things in existence.
Can I maybe get some proof or some, like, reasoning of that, please? Maybe? Yeah?
The value of man is measured by his manners, not his material size or the number of his atoms, or the level of energy in his cells.
Oh, okay, actually, I kind of agree with this point. I like this point. We value each other based on being good people and, you know, the actions we do and so on. I kind of like that, yeah. If you're a good person, you have more value. If you're a bad person, you have less value. I think that's fair. I like that.
The value of man is recognized by how deeply he complies with the divine obligations within himself.
Oh, and you ruined it. If a person really had divine obligations within himself, then surely they'd be the same in every single one of us. Surely they'd be innate within us. We'd be born with them and we'd all be aware of what they are. There'd be no doubt about it. We wouldn't need a book to tell us. We wouldn't need a god to tell us. We wouldn't need like divine intervention at all. And they wouldn't differ so greatly between cultures and religions and just different groups of people. We'd all know exactly what they are and they'd be ingrained in our brain if this was the case, but they're not. I think that has to tell you something.
There is a good man and an evil man, but there is no good mountain and evil mountain. There is no faithful planet and unfaithful planet. It is only man who can uphold values, purpose, and meaning.
So again, I think this is oversimplifying a lot and not in a good way. For one, I don't think men are just good or evil. I think people act in different ways and these actions and their consequences are judged by others. And sometimes people apply labels like good or evil to the actions or the consequences or even the people. For example, going back to a lot of my recent videos, I don't think Michael and Debbie Pearl are inherently evil people. However, I do believe that the way they treat children and encourage other people to treat children is disgusting and dangerous and should be punished. You could potentially call a lot of their actions evil, but I don't think it's necessarily fair to call them evil through and through. I also think it's important to not just equate like good and evil within like people and say like mountains, because Michael and Debbie can be given the label of evil, or their actions can be given the label of evil because they make the conscious decision to mistreat children. They make the conscious decision to harm and injure others. That makes their decisions and their actions and the consequences of their actions bad and harmful and potentially evil, if you want to go that far. Whereas let's say a volcano erupts and it kills a few hundred people and it destroys some homes and it destroys wildlife and so on. It's a bad thing and it has harmful consequences, but it's not inherently evil because there was no conscious decision. Volcanoes lack consciousness, they lack decision-making skills, they don't have a choice in when or where or why or how they erupt. It just happens. Therefore, I don't think you can apply an evil label to a volcano, right? My point is, we're talking about very different things here, and I don't think it's fair to equate them in any way, even just to make your point, you know?
It is only man who can perceive existence.
This isn't necessarily true. There's actually a lot of animals who have this kind of like self-awareness and are very aware of themselves as like, you know, entities and stuff, and have a sense of self and being separate to others. You know, they can recognize themselves in a mirror and so on. It's quite an interesting thing. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but I'd argue that we don't know for sure that we are the only animals or organisms who can perceive existence.
The brain is made up of the very same material components. No matter how complex the brain is, no matter how complex its material components, the sum of all zeros will always be a zero, no matter how many zeros we add.
Wait, sorry? What? You literally said nothing here. Nothing. This makes no sense and proves no point. There was no meaning to any of those words. In reality, I guess you'd say the brain is made up of cells, right? We all kind of know this. These cells respond to stimuli and they transmit chemical and electrical signals to other cells and in between cells and through their cells and so on. These help us be aware of and understand and interpret and respond to and interact with our surroundings in the outside world. The brain is very, very complex. But yes, it can be broken down into small, simple cells and simple proteins and simple molecules and so on. It's amazing, really. That's what you'd say. I don't know what this guy was trying to get at here with the sum of zeros bit. It's nonsense. Anyway, let's just go back and see where they go with this video, right?
Since matter knows no good or evil, the brain as well knows no good or evil. Hence, the question that poses itself is, How did the concepts of good and evil settle in the brain?
Oh, are you serious? Really? Okay, so this is clearly written by a person who doesn't understand anything about how the actual brain works. Very frustrating. A great book on this topic would be one that I've recommended before, both on this channel and on my podcast. It's called Synaptic Self by Joseph Ledoux, or Ledoux, or I don't know, I'm terrible with pronunciation, especially French names. Basically, he talks about how everything from like our personalities, our choices, our decisions can all be traced back to how our brains work on the cellular level, on like a really simple basic level, right? How the brain is structured, how chemical and electrical signals are sent through cells and between cells and so on. All of that comes to shape our personality and who we are and our actions and so on. It's a really interesting book. There's a lot of other stuff written on the subject. Very interesting. For a similar discussion, you might want to check out episode 3 of the Here and How podcast called What Makes You, You. Again, we discuss a lot of this stuff and it's pretty interesting. But anyway, going back to the video, I wouldn't exactly say the brain knows no good and evil, whatever. Good and evil aren't these like concepts set in stone. They're man-made, they're social constructs, and they can change. They can be interpreted in different ways, they can be applied in different ways, you know. What is good and what is evil changes from society to society throughout time, even between individuals. What's good and evil to me might be entirely different to what is good and evil to my boyfriend. They're concepts created by our brains. The concepts of good and evil didn't just settle in our brains from somewhere. Otherwise, everyone would see good and evil in exactly the same way, which I can objectively say we do not. Also, if good and evil did just settle in our brains, then there wouldn't be people who have kind of like brain disorders, who lack empathy, for example, or who don't understand how some actions will harm others, or who can't kind of foresee the consequences of their actions, or they don't understand why they should care about other people, and so on. You know, there wouldn't be those kinds of people if we had this ingrained sense of good and evil from some external source, you know?
What prevents the brain from annihilating the whole earth and everything that lives on it? Why can't the brain think of placing the weakest of mankind in animal cages? Why can't the brain get rid of all the sick and handicapped, so as to leave only the highly efficient, like the Nazi project Achtung T4?
You know what, I guess if you want to be honest, the brain can do all that. But do you know what stops most people? The brain. Empathy, emotions, a biological or evolutionary need to survive and thrive and see others do the same. People care about other people, and that's because of how our brains and our bodies work.
The material brain does not know if any of the above actions is good or bad, because the brain is completely indifferent when it comes to morals. Since it is made from the very same atoms of the earth, there is no connection, near or far, between morals and the brain.
Please stop comparing the brain to like a rock just because they're both made of stuff. I mean, that's a really loose, generic kind of term and comparison, and it's silly. But I mean, I guess in that case, you could just say, oh, the ear is basically a handbag because they're both made of stuff and they both have a space inside. Therefore, it doesn't matter that they both have entirely different ways of working, different functions, different structures. They're made up in different ways because they're practically the same, right? They're just stuff. So why bother with a handbag anymore? I'm just going to carry all my goods in my ear from now on. It's silly, it's stupid, it's ridiculous. You know, if you want to be picky, you can say that the brain itself might not know the difference between good and bad actions. Because, you know, it's just a bunch of cells and chemicals and signals and stuff, right? But the consciousness that it creates does know the difference. The consciousness gives us this capacity to like think for ourselves and understand our actions and how our actions affect ourselves and others and the people and the world around us, right? The brain creates consciousness, and the consciousness is what can tell the difference between good and evil actions. It's the one that can understand and investigate and start to pick apart and build these ideas of morality. Rocks can't do that. So while rocks and the brain are technically both stuff, they're very different kinds of stuff, and they do very different things, and they're not comparable at all. Our brain and our consciousness and our kind of high levels of thinking, it's what we've evolved to do to ensure our survival, both as like individuals and as species. It's what ensures that we thrive, and it's what ensures our happiness, you know? If you want to try and argue there's no connection between morals and the brain, then you might as well argue that morals don't exist at all. Thought and consciousness doesn't exist at all. But then they'd just come back and argue that, oh, but morality is the thing because God created it and he says it in this way and he says this is morality and then they go on to say that, like, because God created it and says that it's this, we don't ever have to question it or consider it or think about how or why we're following it because it has nothing to do with us or the brain. We just need to be mindless drones, like doing exactly as we're told, following these rules without ever bothering to understand the reasons for the rules. I feel like I know this is the argument that he's going to try and make in the rest of this video, but it's a stupid, irresponsible argument. For one thing, there's no solid proof of a god, never mind that all morality stems from him. And even if we did have proof of a god, we still have a conscious brain. We still have the capacity to question and to try and understand morality and ethics, so why shouldn't we? Isn't it better to understand the consequences of our actions before we act than just act because we're told to? Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. His point here was just there's no connection between morals and the brain. But from what we know about how the brain works, even the minor stuff we know about how the consciousness and thought works, we know this is completely wrong. Even us having the ability to examine morality within the brain, to me, says there's a connection there. I guess you could say in the same way, there's a connection between, like, pain and the skin, right? The skin takes signals in from the outside world, our nervous system interprets it, tells us what to feel and how to respond, and that might be moving away, it might be yelling out, it might be feeling the pain. The brain and morality is a bit like that, but on a big, way more complicated level, and on a much, much bigger scale, because it's not just happening in our brains, but in everyone's. Kind of. It's a little bit like this. This is not the best analogy. I'm just going to keep going with it. But as people, we're constantly taking information in from the world around us, right? Just like the skin. And we think back on our actions, we think about other people's actions, we think about how the actions of us and other people have affected our lives and the lives of people around us. We watch people, we hear people, we read about people, we see people. That's kind of like watching people as well, isn't it? I know. And then in our brains, we analyze all these actions together and we make these judgments. And we assess people and their actions and we think, well, what would have happened if such and such a person had done this thing differently? Or what would have happened if I'd done this thing differently? We do these kind of big, complicated analyses in our heads, right? And so on. And because of this, we can then consider our future actions and try and think about what the consequences are going to be before we act and before we even carry them out. And that informs our decisions on how we act in the future. Making decisions about our actions, making judgments about others' actions, understanding how our actions affect other people and our own lives, and discussing these things with other people. It all plays a part in creating what we know as morality, right? That's why what is considered moral changes not only throughout time, but depending on where you are and who you're with. Anyway, this was a long bit of me rambling. I'm sorry. Let's get back to the video.
As for the notion that says that societies could be the origin of morality, this idea is so strange because morals are subjective and they concern man as a man, not the society as a society.
Wait, what? I'm so confused here. So they're admitting morality is subjective, right? That's cool. I'm on board with that. But saying morals concern men but not society is just weird, right? You realize that society is made up of people and that people influence society and society influences people, right? They're not, they influence each other. They're not just these separate little entities.
If any of this was true, and morals have originated from the society, the Nazis would have been right in disposing of all others, since this is what the society would want. Hence, morals are separate from the society, and both the good and the bad societies know what righteousness is and what evildoing is.
Actually, no. If anything, I think this just proves that society does have an influence on morality, if anything. It's easy to look back with hindsight and think what the Nazis did were wrong, but do you really think that at the time Hitler thought that what he was doing was in any way wrong or evil? No, he didn't. He thought what he was doing was best for him and Germany and his people at the time, and he managed to convince a pretty big number of people of this too. He didn't sit there and think, oh, I'm going to do this evil thing today and it's going to make me feel guilty and bad, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm an evil person. That wasn't Hitler, that wasn't what he did. He thought he was acting in the best interests of him and his people. To him, what he was doing was morally right. Just the rest of the world that disagreed. To him, there was nothing morally wrong with getting scientists to perform horrific experiments on humans, because he thought it would lead to helping his people fight illnesses and get better and be better people in the future. To him, there was nothing wrong with killing masses of people because he thought it was purifying his country's population. He'd rationalized this in his head, and he thought it was right. He thought he was doing morally the right thing. And there were hundreds of kids at the time in the Hitler Youth who were also taught that this was the right way of thinking, that this was morally correct. They didn't think twice about like turning their parents into the police if they said something that disagreed with Hitler. They didn't think twice about just following these ethical rules that the Nazis had set down. Of course, we look at this now, and just as the rest of the world did at the time, and when we see, this is horrible, because to us we're like, oh god, innocent people are being hurt and killed, and this isn't fair, we find it disgusting. But that's not how the Nazis saw it a lot of the time. And to me, that just shows how subjective morality is. Like I say, he wasn't there thinking, oh, what evil thing can I do today? He was there thinking, how can I make things better for me and my people and my country? That's the way he saw it. And even though we can look back now and say he did it in the wrong way, it just kind of proves that morality is subjective. It changes from society to society, depending on who you're around and where you are and what you've been taught and so on. It changes depending on the time and the place and the country and the people, It's subjective, and I entirely disagree with this original video because I think if anything, the Nazis show morality is subjective, and the society you're in and the people you're around and where you are does influence what you think is morally right or wrong.
Consequently, morals are far beyond the brain and the society. Religion is the only thing that gives a rationalization for manners. The only thing that gives morals their distinctive character. Morals can only be perceived within the framework of divine accountability, and religion is the only vivacious entity in the whole existence, since it is the only guidance we have to the purpose of existence.
God, okay, right, lot to take in here, but I'll just say this. Just because you use big words and you make a lot of "this is a fact" statements, and you say it in an authoritative tone, doesn't make you correct. Are you really trying to say that the only rational reason to do good things for other people is to get to heaven or some nice afterlife, or because you're blindly following a god's rules? Really? Is it not possible that a person can rationally want to do good things to make themselves and others around them feel good? Is it not rational that people want to make their own lives and the lives of people they care about easier and just make the world a better place? How is that not rational? And don't try and tell me that the only way you can tell right from wrong is if a god tells you one way or the other. No, you can tell right from wrong based on the impact it has on the immediate world around you and on you. If you take an ice cream from a baby, you know that's wrong, not because, you go to some holy book and go, yeah, God said stealing's wrong, so that's why this was wrong. No, you know it's wrong because you just took an ice cream from an innocent person and you had no rights over that ice cream, whereas the other person did, and now that person is crying and you made them cry and you feel bad about it and they feel bad about it, and that's how you know taking ice cream from a baby is wrong. Not because of God. And finally, religion being the only attractive option because it's the one that gives us a purpose for living. That's stupid. I completely agree, because I guess existing, building a life, seeing your species and other species thrive and be happy and making other people, I guess that's just not enough. Screw that, it's enough for me and I love it.
Through religion, we know why we are here, what follows death, what existence means, and what is needed from us. Without religion, the universe will regress to total blindness and nihilism.
Nah, mate, without religion, the majority of the universe would just keep going exactly as it is right now, completely unaffected. I think you overestimate the impact of humans in the whole universe. In the grand scheme of things, we are tiny and insignificant. We've not been around for very long. We don't take up very much space. We're not a big deal. As for descending into nihilism without religion, I guess I kind of disagree on this too. I don't know, I don't really know enough about nihilism in too much detail. Basically, it's like to try and put it very simply, it's this like philosophical viewpoint that nothing really matters or has reason, I guess. All values and religions, morals, rules, whatever, they're all baseless and we know nothing for certain, right? And this is kind of like a weird point because part of me wants to just sit here and shout, I don't think lack of religion will lead to nihilism. And another part of me wants to shout, and even if it did, so what? Basically, I don't quite know enough about nihilism in detail to form a like complete, fully fleshed out opinion on this point. So I'm going to pass this one over to you guys. What do you think about this idea that without religion we would all descend into nihilism? Like, let me know, do you agree with this point, do you disagree, and why?
Ibnul Qayyim, may Allah have mercy on him, says, there is no pathway to happiness or well-being in this life, or the afterlife except that which is pointed to us by the prophets. There is no way to distinguish the good from the bad in details except through them. The satisfaction of the Creator can never be attained except at their hands. Their guidance and way of living is our only herald to good morals, deeds, and words. This whole world is pitch black and damned except for where the sun of the revelation shone.
Oh, talk about trying to force someone to like follow your religion out of fear. Like, seriously, it's this typical join us or you'll never be happy motive. So many religions do it. So many marketers do it, actually. Seriously, it is a pretty well-known marketing technique. The difference is marketers are usually way more subtle about it, you know? I normally get like an email newsletter from New Look, and it contains something like, don't miss out on these summer swimsuit bargains. And then all of a sudden, I'm sat there thinking, damn, I need to buy 7 new bikinis right now, despite the fact I can't even swim, and I have no holiday planned this year. But I don't want to miss out on these bikini bargains, so I need to buy them right now. Fear of missing out. Here, they're kind of doing the same with Islam, but, they're way less sneaky about it. They just come right out and say it. And it's not necessarily fear of missing out on cute bikinis. It's fear of eternal misery that they're threatening. Slightly more serious.
Without the divine revelation, we would not know the purpose of existence, the meaning of goodness, or its value. Without the divine revelation, the whole world would be reduced to nothing but a scary frivolity.
Hey mate, lose the scary, and I am up for this. A life of frivolity? I'm good with that.
Without revelation, we would have just been star stuff, as Carl Sagan says.
Again, I'm fine with this too.
Prophethood is the only pulse of existence, and without it, the best inventions and the most ecstatic desires would have been real terror. Without religion, the whole world is a big waste. If you ask an atheist this existential question,
okay, I'm an atheist. I can answer these questions. Let's go.
Why are we here in this life?
Well, when a mummy and a daddy love each other very much, Oh, is that not what you meant? Okay, you kind of want to know like a why, not a how, why. Got you. Okay, well, I've said it before. I'll say it again, right? We're here just because we are. We're here to live, we're here to survive, we're here to thrive as a species and create something great and pass on our genes, or maybe not pass on our genes, and enjoy the time we have. And that's enough for me. If it's not enough for you, then maybe, I don't know, reevaluate your life and figure out how you can make this life enjoyable and worth it for you.
What will happen to us after we die?
Corpses rot. We become food to help other little animals and other little organisms thrive and grow and live on and have babies. We just become a part of the food chain. And that's alright. We live on in people's memories and then eventually we're forgotten. And if we've created something amazing, that's going to live on for years and years after us. Maybe we haven't and maybe it won't, and that's okay too.
He will either resort to suffixity or he will stay silent.
Ha, well, she didn't resort to either, so in your face, you faceless narrator.
Hence, religion is a natural requirement when it comes to perceiving moral values or realizing the meaning of existence or answering the existential question of who created this whole existence? Who created man? What is the purpose from our existence? And the wisdom from actions or beings?
Whoa. I know this is like your conclusion, but you're jumping ahead there, mate, alright? Before we even answer who created this whole existence, we need to be asking, did this existence need a creator? And I would say the answer is probably no. And then I'd ask, was it likely this existence had a creator? Again, no. And then I'd say, Is there any evidence this existence had a creator? And this one is the biggest, fattest no. We just have no evidence of it. Therefore, we don't need to ask who created this existence, because chances are we didn't have one. And before you even try and come back with this whole, but existence is proof of its creator. No, that's just not true at all. That's not true for so many other natural things or naturally occurring things. A growing plant is not proof of a farmer. Yes, a farmer may have planted it, or it may have been a seed dropped by a bird. It may have been a seed blown in the wind. It might have just been a little seedling that's been there for a while, and one day it's like, okay, the conditions are right, I'm going to grow now. Like, there are lots and lots of other reasons. It's not just a farmer planted this seed or a gardener planted this seed. You don't always need an active creator or an active, like, person or being to start something. Sometimes things just naturally occur. You don't see a rock face and think, who carved this? Most of the time it was done by water or wind, just erosion. You don't need a carver. And that's why when you look at the earth, you don't think, who created this? It can be naturally occurring. Anyway, that's the end of the video, and that's kind of all I wanted to say. So I kind of like screwed up recording in the middle of this, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but for these last like 5 minutes or so, this is like 3 hours later than I recorded the first bit because my camera battery died. Oh, I'm so useless at this. I'm not the most professional YouTuber, am I? In my last video, I asked you guys about the whole child-free movement and what you guys think of it and what you think of people who choose to be child-free. And so my little shout out here goes to, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Alyssa Blackham. Alyssa? I'm not sure. Sorry. I'm 19 and I don't want kids. When I picture my life in the future, nothing about that daydream involves kids. I can relate. But obviously because of my age, people are like, oh, you'll change your mind, and it drives me crazy. We expect kids at 14, 15, 16 to plan out their future careers and stuff, but a 19-year-old is presumed to not know her own mind or what she wants. Even if I was to change my mind, I don't see what my decision has to do with anyone else. I kind of love you a little bit. The other thing is I think we need to start normalizing other ways of having children, particularly in a world where there is no one ideal of family or love. Most importantly, adoption. There are thousands of kids in the world without a family, unloved, traumatized, yet the human race continues to produce more and more children to the point where at some point we'll run out of resources whilst not looking after the kids we already have. I love these comments so much. Oh, this is amazing. I relate to you so much. I get what you're saying so much, and I completely agree. I think so many more people need to feel like adoption isn't like a second choice, you know, like when, oh, you can't have kids, have you thought about adoption? I think we need to encourage adoption as like a more sort of normal everyday thing. Well, not every day, but you know, like a more normal thing to do, because there are so many kids out there who need good homes. Like, I want to think twice about adopting another dog, but Dan somehow feels a little bit like iffy about adopting a child, whereas I'm like completely open to it in the future, like far, far in the future. But no, I completely agree, and I just thought it was a great comment, and I wanted to say thank you and give you a little shout out for that. If you guys want to shout out in my next video, let me know what you think of the whole a lack of religion creating a world full of nihilism sort of comment or debate. Like, do you think if the world lacked religion, then we'd all be nihilists? And if so, do you think that is a good or a bad thing? I don't know, let me know your thoughts, and if I like your comment, I'll give you a shout out in the next video. But for now, I'm going to stop rambling because it's what I do and I'm still doing it. But seriously, for now, thank you so much for watching today. You guys are amazing, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching today. If you liked this, you can see more from me on the Here and How podcast, a weekly science podcast I co-host. I also have merch available if anyone is interested and wants to check it out. But for now, thank you so much to everyone watching, and an even bigger thank you to everyone supporting me on Patreon this month. A special thank you goes out to Gambit and his Chauffeur, Deshauwn, Mark Dauner, Lemmings, Christian Berg, Religion is BS, Rachel B. Royer, Matthew Meinema, Jaylee Moore, Sir Michael Moore, Jadeon Sheppard, Greg Clyde, Pizelated Skeptic, and Tate D. Gibbs. You're all amazing, and to everyone mentioned on this end screen and down in the description below, I love you guys so much. Thank you.
It's delicious.